Welcome back. I'm so proud of you for staying the course and saying yes to investing in yourself. The world you create around you is the direct result of the inner world. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And we, without realizing it, we're creating ecosystems all around us. And there's moments in time that our blind spots are protecting us just as much as my blind spots protect me from realizing what I'm creating in the world around me. Last time we covered where are my areas of mistrust. Now, you may not perceive yourself like I didn't. I didn't perceive myself as someone who had a lot of mistrust issues. I'm very trusting by nature. I have a lot of trust, a lot of relationships. But I didn't realize that every once in a while there was like this little armor person that would step in and try to protect me when I had a feeling of mistrust. Now, the hard work is starting to identify when those shifts happen and what core belief is causing that misalignment where the soul is taking over control. In this episode, we really want to unpack that really big villain of shame that you and I, 99.9% of us, probably have core beliefs way buried deep inside of shame. Shame is that core belief that there is literally something wrong with me. That like if there was an assembly line in heaven, that you were the one that kind of fell off the assembly line and got super glued back together and God's like, don't tell her or him. But in reality, as much as we feel broken or something's wrong with me, and we live in a culture of Dr. Google and we can all look at what's wrong with me and what's right and all these things, in those moments, if we're not aware, while we can look at what's a misalignment producing symptoms, it's not the same thing as saying, what are the areas in my soul that I've believed a lie of shame, that there's something wrong with me? Instead of going, okay, there's a misalignment producing a symptom. You may have a temper. You may overspend or overeat or have an eating disorder of anorexia or something. You may have any multitude of mood disorders, and that doesn't mean that that's an identity statement. Anytime you say the sentence, I am, you are now to your inner world, which your inner world is very stickler on words. Your I am statement is a I am. So when my clients say, I am ADHD, I am bipolar, I am a narcissist, I am whatever, unfaithful, and I can't help it, I would agree that there's probably symptoms and profiles, and you may meet criteria for some of those things. But I would caution you from saying the sentence, I am, or my ADHD brain, my disordered genes, or whatever you might say. Those sentences are anchored in the belief that I am broken. And here's why it matters. It's subtle because the symptoms are real. We're not Pollyanna pretending like the things we're not struggling with, that they're just magically not there. What we're saying is the I am is a spirit identity. When you speak about the I am, you're talking about something that's more eternal and real and permanent to who you are. That's a really big difference from saying my body is experiencing these symptoms. In my health, I'm experiencing these things. My brain at this point is functioning with ADHD criteria. Whatever. I know the language can get really ugly and weird and clunky, but it does matter that you say, I have been diagnosed or I'm experiencing these symptoms. That is real. That's what your soul is going through. So when we say I am, you're speaking about your personhood, the eternal you. And it's really important that we're careful what we agree with and what labels and identities we allow ourselves to believe about ourselves, whether conscious and unconscious. Because when you believe I am broken, I am slutty, I am lazy, I am dumb, I can't do this, I am just inferior and less than. When you do that, that's literally your spirit man or your true self goes back, and your soul then comes in front and overcompensates. So your soul is now saying, okay, then I will create the false self. I will become the dancing bear that causes approval, acceptance, belonging. I will create the self that then now people will want me. Now again, I will repeat myself like a broken record. You don't realize it's happening in the moment. All of this is going on, just like blood pressure regulation and digestion of food and oxygenation of your blood. All of those things happen without you having to be aware of it. We're on the back end as adults or adolescents going, why am I feeling like this? Why do I struggle with people pleasing? Why do I deal with such perfectionism and running after making sure nobody's unhappy with me? Or the inverse, I work with a lot of well, then I just don't care what anybody thinks. And kind of this overcompensation of acting like and telling myself, genuinely believing I don't care, when that's not really a healthy place either. Both chasing after people's approval, codependence, and this kind of rebellious, I don't care, I'm my own person, if you don't like it, walk out. That's not healthy. It's not a holistic and a balanced way to live. Both of which are overcompensations where the soul is trying to insulate and protect you from you. So last time we talked about me protecting me from others. Now, shame is I'm protecting me from me because I'm denying and blocking, suppressing, or whack-a-moling all the parts of me that I identify as bad or weak or angry or not good enough or going to cause people to reject or abandon me. This feeling like if somebody knew everything about me, they would definitely reject me. So conscious or unconscious, there's parts of us, right? And we favor all the parts of us that get approval and acceptance and belonging and achievement. All of these things kind of hit that dopamine reward pathway, and we put these parts of us, like the dancing bear, at the front. That gets our acceptance and our belonging. That feels wonderful. And then everything else, we just kind of stuff away into metaphorical rooms on the inside. But those parts of self don't actually go away. Buried parts of us still are living and still have emotional resonance, trapped emotion, which are triggers, and then this thought feeling filter vortex where it's like, I don't know where these feelings are coming from, these thoughts are coming from, but they just keep entering my mind. Picture that as a literal part of self. And that's the deep dive that we want to do. Instead of thinking your thoughts are random and it's just all chaotic, start to recognize there's a literal part of you that is thinking, I am not enough. If you're bold and confident and you know your thing and you walk into a room and all of a sudden you're like, why do I feel insecure? Why do I feel shaky or nervous or snacky a lot? Why am I doing this? Instead of just assuming it's a quirk or I'm just being nervous, assume maybe there's a part of me that unconsciously fears they're going to see through my veneer, my dancing bear, and they're going to see something in me. People who struggle with intimacy and connection with others, often it's because we struggle with intimacy and connection with ourselves. There are so many parts of our inner world. There's the happy-go-lucky part of you, an angry part of you, a learner part of you, competitive part of you. You have all these facets and prisms to your personality, kind of like an orchestra. And so in health, all of those parts, those sections, wind instruments and percussion and the string instruments, they're all working together so cohesively that you don't necessarily hear them separate. Right? Every part of self is showing up in right alignment and you have a beautiful, harmonious symphony. But at any point when a part of us goes, whoa, that's a bad part of me. I saw that facial expression of disapproval on mommy's face. Or daddy didn't come and pick me up. Maybe it's something about me. If any time, whether good or bad, big or in our imagination, if we said, oh my gosh, that happened because of me, right? So that's why it's really important, especially with childhood divorce, to go back and process, how did my little kid soul process mommy and daddy's fighting or disagreement or somebody being there or not being there or even them passing away? As a child, we don't have retrospect. We're in the moment and we're just taking that in, kind of undigested information of like, oh, they're not here. At that point, we are developmentally egocentric, which means things happen because of me. I'm not developmentally aware enough to realize, oh, daddy's mad because he had a hard day at work. Or mommy's busy and looking at her phone because she's sad about an argument with her mom earlier today, right? Children don't have that capacity. Children take everything in whole and unilateral as it must be something about me that their facial expression looked like that or their behavior was like that. Whatever it was, the inside me is more likely to blame me because that's the illusion of control. And the illusion of control is if I can just control and fix me, then I don't have to realize the reality. It's kind of an unfair, scary rough world sometimes. Sometimes it's magical and unicorns, and sometimes this world's very unjust and painful. And so to defend against that, to block and not see that reality, we will naturally blame ourselves and go, well, that happened because of me. If I would just had a better attitude, if I was just a better kid, right? So that shame message is, it's about me. And then depending on personality, the soul overcompensates. Some people, again, become codependent, people pleasers, kind of that dancing monkey performing for others. Or, I don't care what you think, I'm rebellious, I'll act out, I'm going to show the world how tough and independent I am. When really, on both sides, it's the exact same core belief of shame. That I am afraid this real me on the inside is bad, not good enough, and there is literally something wrong with me. This feeling of not being enough is where your spirit man hides. The soul overcompensates, and now we're chasing after people's approval and or rejecting people to protect ourselves from ever feeling that trapped emotion of shame come up. Because you may not have known the label for it. Shame is that really intense feeling where you hate that person right now, right? Like they said something, they said feedback. Somebody just the other day, I gave them gentle, kind feedback about taking care of themselves and making good choices for themselves and their family. And he stands up, I just want to leave your office. I don't like you. Like this is effed up, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, can I just pause you? When you're saying that right now, what's going on? What did you hear me say? He said, you know how my dad is? And he caught himself and he's like, oh, right? Like there was so much shame at the thought that somebody would give feedback that it felt like I'm saying you're not enough, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're inferior. And so from this very fragile, wounded part of his soul, he kind of created this big, angry, upset outburst to protect himself and want to get away from me. In your own life, are there times that maybe people have said things and you have this big reaction? And maybe later you're like, hey, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my cool. We rationalize a million reasons why that happened. But the fact that we go from 0 to 90 and we have big reactions, whether it's tearful, feeling abandoned, feeling rejected, feeling humiliated and angry about that, or whatever variation of that, many times that's the root of shame. And it can go in a million splintered directions as we're looking in the world for somebody to affirm you're enough. I want you and I accept you and you belong. But the problem is when the inside me rejects me, even all the approval and acceptance and belonging in the world is still never enough. We're chasing after it like broken cisterns that are empty, right? We're constantly looking for something that never comes. Chasing after the approval of people, which we don't realize that's what we're doing, right? We just want everyone to like us. We just want to be excellent. We just want to be the best. We just don't want to make any enemies or make any waves. Those are common expressions when we're really aware of people never abandoning, rejecting, and unwanting us because I'm already in a place of abandoning and rejecting and unwanting me. So then I'm hypersensitive and queued up to others abandoning, rejecting, and unwanting me. The irony is we walk around actually projecting a lot more of our inner world than we realize. When my clients tell me, I just constantly have this like fear of abandonment, or I'm good in a relationship and then all of a sudden it gets triggered, right? And then I just kind of have this fear of rejection. I don't know why. Instead of thinking it's just this random thought popping around in your head like a ping pong ball, assume it's a literal part of you that is rejected. There's a literal part of you that is abandoned, that you in your own inner world have sent the judge and jury against this part of you that you said you're bad. You're emotional, you're weak, you're vulnerable, you caused me to get rejected and not wanted. Let's say you're a kid and you're expressing your little art gift as a child and a teacher or a parent or another child says, ew, what's that? That's dumb. Or what's that supposed to be? In that moment, irrespective of their motive, if the little soul goes, oh my gosh, I'm not putting my creativity out there again, then it just like it shrinks on the inside, right? The little guy on the inside hides, and then the soul then creates a false self. And the false self says, okay, then I am logical. I'm an engineer. I will be the most fastidious person on the world, but you will not see me be creative. Now, that's kind of in their DNA, right? Like if it's in your spirit, it wants to come out. It's something that's wired in you and you feel most alive when you do it. But the problem is it's really hard to get yourself to do it when you've already rejected that part of you. What we perceive as others rejecting us is actually frozen now, and you have another part of you, a protector, a part of the soul, that's keeping this part of you jailed. Now, for many people, that could be their anger. Like this good people-pleasing part of me is going, no anger, you never get to come out again. Maybe you saw somebody who had a really bad temper, or they overspent in their money, or they were not generous and they were just very frugal and mean and harsh. And so you've overcompensated and you went to the other extreme trying to make sure with this inner vow, I will never be frugal and ungenerous like X person, or I will always be kind and generous and loving and good, but I have no boundaries and people walk all over me, but I don't know how to fix that because your inner world is on autopilot. And the dynamic is literally frozen and continually playing on the inside. So what we want to recognize is where you perceive, you walk into a room and you feel like people are judging you, rejecting you, wanting you, not wanting you, whatever that might be, assume that that's actually a living self state on the inside. If I feel unworthy and not good enough, instead of assuming it's them, assume maybe there's a me on the inside holding the feeling of being not good enough, unworthy, bad, unwanted of some capacity. And then there's another part of me that is right now judging, rejecting, walling off this part of me that we've decided in the inner world is not acceptable. That is a regression. That means that part of my soul has stayed stuck. Now, the fascinating thing is we have to now peel apart identity from behavior. The hardest thing for me to get my clients to do is to say, this thing I hate, it's your temper, it's your overeating, it's your lust issue, whatever it might be. I hate this about myself, right? Make that go away. That's why I'm here, is for you to take that away. And for them to say, hey, I want to hold that there's value to the personhood attached to that part of me, even though I do not want to engage in that behavior. Now, let me say that again. There is a part of you that the behaviors you hate about yourself, it's attached to an identity. It's attached to some part of you. But by accepting and loving that part of you is not saying I accept and love and embrace the behavior attached. That would be like allowing a 10-year-old child to run the White House. The regressed parts of us are very immature. They're very stuck and stubborn and selfish. Me included, right? We have these parts of us that are kind of held up internally, and they've been disconnected from other relationships, connection, intimacy, love, acceptance, belonging. The good things in your life are not penetrating past that wall of defense where the bodyguard is at the door. So what we want to do is open that door and say, I choose love. I choose radical acceptance of the part of me, even though I'm not accepting the behavior, the mindset, everything around that. So let's say you're in a married relationship and you want to keep your family intact. And yet there's this nagging part of you that just kind of gets bitter or resentful and just this little ruminating, and you're like trying to keep shut the door, like make that stop. Like I don't want to act on that. The last thing you would want to do is then bring that part of you conscious, because human nature is we're afraid that we're now going to sabotage the relationship. We're going to walk out. We're going to say or do something that hurts someone else, generally because it's in the same way we've been hurt. So everything we go through, it's modeling and it creates a template. And those parts of us that we reject in ourselves get rejected in others, right? And so when someone has hurt you or done something that your soul was not okay with, then shame is me taking in the introject or the modeling of that person. The part of me that is like them is now held in prison. And another part of my soul, again, these are parts of me that are supposed to be conscious, like the wind instrument and the percussion instrument. Now they're playing rogue assignments, disconnected from their original kingdom assignment of what you were intended in the fullness of your personality. So if we go back and we start recognizing, hey, soul, what's going on? What's this breach? What's this disconnect about? I love you. I honor you. What's going on? Now, the me that's the protector standing in judgment, I can say, hey, I know you're afraid of rejection. I know you're afraid of being angry like your dad and hurting your kids the way that you were hurt. I know that you're afraid of going without. And so you're really afraid of this part of you that overdoes it and oversplurges and over addiction, whatever it might be. I love you and I honor you. And now let's create context that we can restore unity and reconciliation between these feuding parts of self. That the part of you that's the protector, making sure you have control and you don't allow that part of you to escape and run rogue and do something bad. The other part of you that's sitting in the shame, sitting in the sulking, the bad feelings, the anger and hurt and injustice, this part of you, now we can have empathy and say, I understand that your method so far has been the false comforter of turning to food or addictions or any kind of compulsion behavior and temper that I'm like, you ruined my life. I'm really mad at you. But I'm not mad at you. I'm recognizing you have needed comfort. You've been out of alignment. And now, once conscious, we can now pursue right alignment and getting the original needs met the way they were intended in health. But if we don't do that work, then we're constantly a house divided against itself. I'm going, with my New Year's resolutions or goals, and then I'm like, 3 months in and I'm sabotaging myself, right? How many times have we moved toward a goal, a relationship, a career entity, and then before you know it, the nagging insecurities, the fears, the dreams, the sleepless nights kind of creep back in? That's our opportunity to open the blinds and realize what's going on inside. You're not broken. There's not something wrong with you, but there is a misalignment. Many times because of shame, Many times because of mistrust toward others, and many times because of mistrust toward ourselves. Anywhere where you dislike, hate, disrespect, disavow any part of you, when you just go, I don't even want to think about those memories anymore. I just don't even want to go there. While that's temporarily a great solution, it's not a lifetime solution because that means you're literally compartmentalizing and creating breaches between parts of self where there's literally walls disconnecting your inner world. So if you've ever said the thought or said, I just don't feel like myself. I don't know why these thoughts are entering my mind. I don't know where these feelings are coming from. I know better, but then you can self-assess and step back and say, my inner world's probably divided. Signals are coming up without conscious awareness of where they're coming from. That's letting me know my inner world is not communicating the way it's intended to. So just like the spine analogy, your mind can be clear and sharp and your fingers be tingly. You think, and I think, I'm doing well. I'm in my true self. I'm in my lane, doing all these great things. And why do I have this insecurity? Why do I have this people pleasing, this fear of man? Why do I keep procrastinating or struggling with time management or keeping my house clean or my car clean? Why do these continue to be struggles and issues and emotions and dynamics in and around my life? Instead of just abstract, make it personal. Picture there's a part of you that either, and probably both, either is mistrusting of others, and so the soul stepped in, protecting you, and or mistrusting of you. There's some part of you think is bad, and so obviously the spirit then is put in jail, and the soul then creates the people-pleasing, the performing, and or again, the other extreme of like, I don't effing care what you think about me, blah, blah. This over-exaggeration of independence also is not healthy. Both extremes are not in balance. And when you catch yourself in those states or those thoughts, you can start recognizing, I probably have some house divided against itself dynamics playing out in my inner world. And now I can start unpacking what might be those core beliefs of shame that I picked up early in life. And if we go back to Erik Erikson, the psychosocial stages of development, we can just look at, shame versus autonomy, right? Autonomy versus shame, doubt. Yeah, sorry. We can go back to autonomy versus shame and doubt. If you doubt yourself, second guess yourself, that's the accompaniment of shame. Autonomy is that true centered sense that I am smart, I'm capable, I can do this, and I'm happy to create room for others, room for them to like me and not like me, for people to partner and not partner, that I don't need their approval, but I'm also not so independent that I don't need their approval, right? But there's this healthy fluidity that I can engage with the world and allow true intimacy. And this is my last major point I want to say about the shame part, is when we're in a posture of shame, whether we realize it or not, because most of the time we have it down there and there's different elements to shame. You can conquer one part and still have other elements, just be aware that we don't know that's down there because everything inside is trying to defend and block. But if you struggle with intimacy, with eye contact, with people asking questions and it kind of feels a little bit too invasive, maybe it's invasive, I have no idea, I'm not there with you, but also be aware, is it because I'm unconsciously afraid they're going to see past my false self, they're going to see something in me? If you struggle to have to always be the center of attention or never want to be in the center of attention, both of those are extremes. The pendulum goes too far either direction, and you don't really know how to do intimacy, and or you might do intense intimacy too quick and not know how to balance and build trust with somebody slowly over time. But instead, it's like you find somebody, you jump in a relationship, it's really hot and heavy and intense, and then it's like cold and we're ghosting and it's over and I don't trust you to begin with. It's very dramatic, right? Be aware of your level of intimacy. Do some self-assessments across your relationships. Is there a mistrust of others? Is there a mistrust of a part of me that I may not be aware of, but I can look at the fruit of it? That intimacy is uncomfortable and or too much intensity, too quick, almost like you're trying to secure them in your life. But then the relationship usually doesn't last. It's too intense, kind of like a meteor, and then it fails and it ends really quick and abrupt as well. Now, those are signals, not the only ones, but just some things to be aware of. How much intimacy do you have with others? And how much intimacy do you have with yourself? As comfortable as you are in journaling and process, meditation, where you're just kind of in your own body, reflecting, present with what you're thinking and feeling and experiencing, the more intimacy you allow with yourself, and I'm not talking about anything sexual, I'm just talking about self-awareness, self-connection, the more you'll be able to do that fluidly and comfortably with the people in your life. If there's a breakdown anywhere in that, which there has been for me as well, where we struggle to journal. I don't make time, I don't want to process, I don't want to talk about my feelings, I don't want to go there. Sometimes, not always, sometimes there could be an element of I'm getting triggered because a part of me is a shame part of me, and I just don't want to feel it, think about it. I don't want to go there. So I'm staying busy. I'm distracted. People that overly serve, overly work, overly help, always achieving. Sometimes it's because they're not wanting to be present with themselves. And so it's really hard to truly be present with that person. If you're always multitasking, if your brain's always going, if you're always on your phone and people are trying to talk to you and you're like, yeah, let me just, and you're always kind of spinning. Be curious. Again, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but be curious if this fast pace might actually be one of your defense strategies against shame, against mistrust of others, mistrust of self. And I don't even want to be present with me. I want to stay up here in performance and achievement, right? We stay so far up here in our thoughts and our execution of details and plans because maybe we don't want to be slow and still and present, and that's uncomfortable. And for prolonged periods of silence, if that's uncomfortable for you and you want to grab your phone, you want to have something to snack on or something to watch or to distract yourself or some homework or something to work on, be aware of that impulse. Start breaking it down and recognizing, oh, that's an effort to try to defend against my shame. I don't like being present where there's pain, where there's something icky and off. I don't like being present when I feel like a bad guy, metaphorically, is living on the inside of me. And so I've put this villain, this bad me, inside of a jail cell. And so the rest of our lives, we live way fast, busy, way up here, distracted and avoiding. because we're so afraid of that part of us coming conscious. And I'll share one illustration that an individual had an incredible life, beautiful marriage, children, career, and all of a sudden started having dreams about being taken hostage and their family being taken, everything being ruined. And now that fear just continued to cycle. We went through their past, the movies they've watched, the news they've watched. We're trying to look for any thread where that may be a present like fear or source of a fear. And finally, in processing, realized, oh, that fear came after they were watching a movie about somebody who made some life choices that were not awesome. And so they didn't even realize it at the time. Watch a movie, eat your popcorn, kiss your loved one, go to bed. In the middle of the night, the unconscious mind started to fear, oh my gosh, I've made really bad choices before, right? So the me that I judge as bad, making bad choices, was the very part of self that it was like, oh my gosh, what if I make bad choices? And what if I ruin it all? And this part of me takes the rest of me hostage, takes over control, ruins my family, takes everything away. Once we started to actually bring that conscious, resolve that inner conflict, the dreams subsided. The anxiety completely abated. Because the inner world no longer was resonating with the fear of a bad guy lurking, that something bad could happen, right? How many times we catastrophize out there without realizing actually the source is something inside that you're afraid of inside of you that you think is bad, weak, vulnerable, humiliating. And so then the inner world is constantly trying to control symbolically the outside world to defend against how vulnerable I feel to this part of me escaping and taking over. Now, if you think of your brain like a computer, how much data would that be taking, right? Minimize browser windows of all these parts of self that are constantly feeling and experiencing and resonating on the inside, and the neurochemicals that are being impacted by regressed parts of self or parts of us that are stuck in the jail cell. Those parts of us are sending signals to the brain. That loneliness, that isolation, that state of literally being abandoned and rejected by myself, that is sending chemical reactions, right? So that throws off neurochemistry. It's not the only thing, but by golly, I've worked with people that when you resolve these inner conflicts, that the world is no longer at a state of kind of inner feud, the soul comes down into a rested place, that I don't have the fear of people finding out about this or me finding out about this part of me I thought was bad, like such and such person that I rejected. When that gets resolved, now your spirit man can lead again. Now you feel like yourself. Now you don't feel like you've lost yourself or you're on the outside looking in. You know, so many of us describe, I feel like I'm on the outside of the group, always just like looking in. I feel like an outsider, like I don't belong anywhere. That's because there's a part of you that doesn't belong inside of you because you're in an active, unconscious, but active state of rejecting and keeping this part of you as an outsider, instead of warmly welcoming and bringing this part of you into the committee, into the conscious awareness of a valuable part of self. And next time, we're going to talk about how do we actually differentiate personhood from behavior, thoughts, and beliefs, right? We don't want to just let a 10-year-old run the show and become the CEO. We don't want to make life choices based on those impulses. So we want to separate identity from who I am, from the behaviors and impulses, so now we can find the appropriate ways to get those needs met and start maturing those regressed parts of us back into health to be a valuable part of our committee and our personality structure. Thanks, guys, and I'm super excited for the work that you're doing as you're journaling and processing and going through workbooks so that you can get a robust and healthy, preventatively robust inner world that's not struggling because you've already created a lifestyle and a culture around stewarding right alignment in your soul and your spirit. Thanks.